So,
All right. Well, I'll recommend them to you, send them your way too. I don't know if they will or not. They communicate with me at times. You know what I mean? So, I mean,
yep,
I'll send them your way. Try to get them on your show because I know they're both campaigning, and
right.
even though I'm a libertarian, I kind of support Rick Bratton, and I definitely support Mike Moon. So, and I guess I don't kind of support Rick Bratton. I like the candidate, in like the libertarian that's running for CD4. I like him. You know what I mean? Like he's a great guy, but I don't think he's campaigning. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
so. I'm not going to promote somebody that's not going to campaign. That sounds stupid. You know what I mean? Like yeah, vote L no matter who they are, whether they're trying. You know what I mean? Like I give Republicans the same shit for it. Like
Right.
vote R no matter who they are. Like
Yep.
I just posted on. Are we ready to start up? I don't want us to be late for the show. When's it start?
Here in just a minute, I'm going to drop your volume down, and then
All right.
again, no cursing.
Yeah.
Don't make me scrub. Don't make me scrub.
Be ready though. Be ready though. But I'm gonna do my darndest for you, John, because I do respect your show.
Well, the problem is one station is licensed, and if I accidentally miss one, they're going to get in deep
you get in
doo-doo.
trouble.
Yeah.
I understand.
Well, they're going to get in
I
trouble.
know you're not trying to.
Yeah. All right. Let me.
Well,
bring,
yeah. I mean, you risk losing your show.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So I'll bring your volume down, and we'll get started in just a minute, bro.
Let's do it.
All right, folks. Let's hit record and let's do this thing. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So let's begin, shall we?
I won't be coming home. I won't be going anywhere. I will guard this post forever. Here on the Alpine slope, where I did my final stand, I shall remain among the ice and snow that binds me to this mountain. A force of nature too strong, sent from above, where spirits lead the way, the winds will never fade. White Friday, I'll take the stairway to heaven. I'm sky high when I die, I'll be immortal.
All right, folks, and we are back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Starting off stuttering. Yay me. Thanks once again for joining me for another podcast here. And this week, we've got Robert Smith back on with us. He is running in District 125 here in the state of Missouri for state rep. Robert, sir, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing well, John. How about yourself, man?
Dude, I had one of those days today. My machine didn't run all day, and I got so angry. You ever get tense enough to where, like, right in between your shoulder blades just gets knotted up from all the tension because you just want to punch somebody in the face?
I've had it in the neck.
Yeah, it that too. It was in my neck, but it was in between my shoulders, just balling up, and it's like, I don't know. I didn't know if it was my body's way of saying take a swing at somebody, but I can't afford to lose my job, so it's like just gonna have to hold that in. But well, I guess Robert, in case we have any new listeners out there, why don't you give everybody a rundown on your candidacy, what area you're covering as far as your district? I already told him you're running for District 125, Missouri, House of Representatives. God, if I could talk tonight. But if you want to go ahead and give everybody the skinny on yourself, and then we'll get into how the campaign's doing and maybe cover some current events as well.
Perfect. So I am a husband, father of 4. I deal with in the agricultural business. I'm a wholesale distributor of Missouri-grown produce and products. We distribute Missouri locally grown items to grocery stores in a 300-mile radius. And we've also shipped off to Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. We've shipped all the way to Colorado. And as part of my message of support where you're from, keep your money local, raise each other up, and the community will thrive. And so I really work to practice that. I practice what I preach. So what I decided to do was run for state rep because I'm tired of pretty much the government usurping my natural rights. And I have 4 children that I am supposed to lead this world to, and it's just really not in shape. And it's time to prepare it for them.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I mean, it's, you know, right now, it's a really big mess, and you know, I've been hearing audio clips from, I guess, the chair of the Fed at some, you know, committee meeting, and one particular congressman, I can't remember his name. He's out of Texas. I know he's a Democrat. And he was very angry that the word inflation was being tied to, the charity that the government showed doling out all that money to people during the pandemic. He did not like the word inflation being tied to that. And it's like, well, idiot, that's what it is. And you did it. You can sit here and you can rip your own arm out of socket trying to pat yourself on the back. But you along with your cohorts did this. This is you. You guys
Exactly.
you dumped $8 trillion into the economy, devalued the currency, and now you want me to thank you for it when I'm paying. Well, and fortunately, it's not fortunate, but compared to other towns, I'm only paying $4.55 a gallon right now. An average that I see is $4.75 to $4.89, and I'm piddly me, low man on totem pole John here is supposed to be grateful when it used to cost me $20-something to fill my tank. Now it's $45 to $50. But yeah, I'm supposed to be grateful for that.
Well, one day you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, I'll be real happy when I don't have any private property anymore. Nothing will please me more than to say, I don't own anything. I work all the time, but I own absolutely nothing. And
I'm just going to go work for you.
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm happy. Thank you, sir. You know.
Yeah, thank you for
and that's what I
allowing me
mean
to
by
dwell
prepare
here.
The world. Exactly. And that's what I mean by prepare the world for my children, or for our children, for the generations beneath us. You know, right now, our government is actively ensnaring us into slavery. And I can actively see it, and a lot of people around can actively see that our government lies, our government covers things up, our government kills, our government is not operating within the constitutional boundaries that we set or we entered a contract into, and it's not being followed. We need to get back to the personal liberties, no victim, no crime, leave people alone, mind your business. That was actually coined on some of America's first money, or at least it was coined on money that was a sample because they were looking to print coinage, right? And so we get back to that point and let people live in harmony and get the government out of our affairs, because our government is literally driving us into poverty through deficit spending, which relates to inflation, directly related to inflation. This is a government that has been doing this for decades. They've been deficit spending. They're allowed to deficit spend because we got the gold standard. The gold standard really kind of held us tight on how much we could grow the scope of the scope and size of the government. Well, we get off the gold standard and we start printing fiat money, and we start having the feds regulate and pretty much manipulate the dollar. And what it did was it allowed the government to start printing money and funding through debt these projects that the government wanted to do that before it couldn't afford to do, which is what actually really helped keep the size of government and the intrusions of government in check. All government programs are failures. All government programs are ran off of thievery, because the government has to steal from somebody in order to give it out. The government programs are inefficient. The government programs are complete and total failures. And so we need to bring it back to our local communities and get back to a gold standard and silver standards where we have sound money. And I believe that we'll see a lot of the issues that was caused by a federal government stepping outside of its constitutional boundaries. We're going to see those issues actually reduce and solve themselves.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, we talk about, we open up with the problems that the feds created, the problems that the feds created, and not admitting to their own failures, because I repeat this a lot, but if this is why I tell people, like, the voluntarianism, like, state of mind, and bringing things to a local level, as much local control as you can, because when you do those things, you get to prove how useless most government is, almost all of it. You literally state a case, and you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you don't need government to make these decisions for you, that you can do it without bureaucracy, without red tape, without the hidden tax called inflation or anything else. You get to do all these things because it's your money, and you're making the choice with your money. You're voting with your dollars. And
Exactly.
that's government's greatest fear, is for the people in this country to open their eyes and see the depths of ineptitude in either your U.S. Congress or even your state houses. They do not want you to understand how inept they are, how wasteful they are. And they definitely don't want you figuring out how much they don't actually care about you, because when people would finally come to an understanding on that government does not care about you, it is not their job, really, in essence, to care about you, then a lot of people would figure out, well, why do I need these jerks up there telling me what to do when I can just do it myself, get it done cheaper, and keep more of my money?
100%. And see, the government doesn't want us to know that we don't need the government. The government needs us. All of the programs that are the government requires us, the constituents, the people. And the government's relying on us and relying on our compliance to just keep forking over all of our money, and while they blatantly squander and waste it. People would also understand the value of hard work if it was actually more upon their own shoulders. My wife and I were talking that, one big point that I've been pointing out to a lot of people since I found out is nearly 50% of Missouri's budget, which we did $46 billion or $47 billion this year budget, is actually is from federal dollars. And the federal government is not sustainable, and it's going bankrupt. And some would argue that it's already bankrupt, just people haven't admitted it yet. And our state budget is unsustainable because we're relying on an unsustainable source. And so therefore, the Republican Party can brag about having a balanced budget in Missouri, but they technically don't have a balanced budget, nor do they have a sustainable budget. Because eventually, when that money's not there, we're all hurting, and they're squandering what resources that we have. And it's time for people to wake up and get involved and speak up and change everything on the local level, because the federal level is not going to change. You would have to overcome such a feat to replace all the Republicans that vote that hurt us, and to replace all the Democrats that vote that hurts us and goes against the natural laws and Austrian economics. The chances of that happening in just a couple years is just astronomically low, right? You can change it a lot faster on the local level. And that's why it's important to be actively involved on the county level and in your state district and your Senate districts, because you can change it faster than what Washington would ever do. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, what the Missouri Freedom, organizations like the Missouri Freedom Initiative have done, and just everybody
awesome
involved with that. Yeah, what we were able to do with HDR 79, what they were able to do with SAPA, 8 years of hard work that finally came to fruition. I think that's a perfect example. If you wanted to try to pass a law in D.C., which, again, you shouldn't have to because there's the Second Amendment just glaring you right in the face. But let's say we had to do it legislatively, which just kills me. It would take...
Let's just say they were trying to legislate some of the enumerated, acknowledged rights in the Constitution that we have. Let's just say they were trying to give some back legislatively.
It would take
Right.
it would take 200 years.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it.
Maybe 200. It's not. It's
Plain
not,
simple.
it won't happen in our lifetimes. I don't believe it'll happen in my children's lifetimes, unless there's some great awakening, which I don't. I hate to sound so pessimistic. I just don't see it because every time, the problem is people will still pay too much attention to the media. And so when people start waking up, like the whole thing with COVID, a lot of these other things, when people start waking up, what's the media do? They treat everybody like cats, and they hang this little fuzzy toy with a bell on it, and they just start ringing it like Pavlov's dog, and all the people start salivating, and now they just forgot what they were so angry about because now they have something else to be angry about. So the misdirection by the media and the government makes it nigh impossible for people to go to D.C. in a massive effort and actually do major changes in that area. But your states, because of nullification and those things, we stand a much better chance at the state and local levels.
Exactly. And you start setting the precedent, and other people will start doing it too. And that's what the world needs, is the demonstration of how to just resist. And, they call it, civil disobedience. Just resist. Just don't do it. You don't have to get violent. You just don't have to do it. And then enough people don't do it, magically it goes away. And that's what people need. And that's, you mentioned the Missouri Freedom Initiative, and there's MoFirst.org. There's groups out there that are educating people, teaching people how to interact with their government. These groups are helping facilitate the connection to your government, because maybe sometimes, when you get out of high school, you're pretty ignorant on how bad your government really is and how inefficient it is. And I think this day and age, maybe kids are actually maybe a little bit more in tune than when I was younger, because I didn't care about Bill Clinton getting, you know what I mean? And the world is starting to waken up to people that are just showing how it's supposed to be done. And it's time that the constituents actually step outside of the norm, stop voting straight Republican ticket. I'm a libertarian. I might not have said that. So naturally I get ignored. I get banned in groups while other Republicans get to post. I get censored and quieted while I hear everybody else complain about being censored, but nobody cares that I'm being censored or ignored. And in certain areas, because there's always groups like you and other people that don't. But the fact is like, the duopoly doesn't want people to know that you can choose other people that isn't a Republican. Well, right now I would hands down constitutionally destroy every Republican that's running in the race right now in the primary, and I'm only going to run against one. But they're willing to vote for people who advocate for taxes, and I've heard it. They're willing to vote for people who advocate for using government to force their will upon you. I've heard it. But they're not willing to, or as far as I'm concerned, they're not willing to stand up and say, I'm going to vote for the guy that has been actively involved. I'm going to vote for the guy that knows what he's talking about. I'm going to vote for the guy that everything that comes out of his mouth is about personal freedom, which includes me, And that's what we need constituents to see, is there are some libertarian candidates out there that actually deserve your support and your vote. And you need to pay attention to them, because in your districts, there's some Republicans that are running that you shouldn't vote for. And then there's Republicans running that you should absolutely vote for. You know what I mean? So we need to wake up and start looking at candidates for candidates rather than the party, and start voting for people who have personal liberty on mind, voting for people who understand the constitutional rights, who understand natural rights and Austrian economics, because as long as we keep electing people who don't understand how these things work, we're going to keep having the same problems. We have candidates running that take farm welfare, that take farm subsidies, they're called, but yet they're against welfare for poverty-stricken people, right? You can't see state welfare for state welfare. Some of these candidates argue against the state spending money on all these programs, but yet they're okay with the programs that send them money. We got to stop electing people like that. We got to stop electing people who cannot demonstrate their understanding and their knowledge, and we got to stop electing people that don't practice it, because people could preach all they want to, but if they don't practice it, they're not going to catch my eye. They're not going to catch my ear. So hopefully by reaching out and letting people know that it's time to really start taking things seriously and getting our country back in line before it's too late. Because not too long ago, China shut down everybody's phone. They have an app and they turned it black. And the Chinese citizens were not allowed to travel out of town, not allowed to go to the mall, not allowed to go to the restaurants, not allowed to go to work, not allowed to ride on the train or public transit, all through an app. The United States has the same COVID tracking infrastructure and the same type of infrastructure in place. It just backed off of stuff because we get pushy when our rights are touched. And but that's where our country's headed. You know what I mean? And we need people to wake up, stop voting straight Republican, start voting for candidates who know what they're talking about, start voting for candidates who preach what they talk about, and start voting for candidates and supporting candidates that are on their game and know what's going on.
And also, we need to do our part, or at least try, because here's the thing. This is going to be a battle to educate people to how things actually should be, because we have too many people to think it's supposed to be the opposite of what it is. As long as it's not, as long as it's happening to the other side, they don't care. Now, when it starts happening to them, they get flustered and they get angry, and then they start screaming and ranting. But it's like, there are some of us out here who try to tell you, you don't want this in general for anybody, because at some point, the weapon that they're using against the other folks is going to be turned on you, because it can happen in one election. You can have, maybe you have some really liberty-minded candidate out there or a representative in office doing things, and he's doing his best to keep things at bay. The next election, for some reason, the other guy gets elected. That progress that was being halted is sped up. And it's that's the thing. I have to, it's easy to blame the candidates, and it's easy to blame the representatives, because in essence, they're up there and they're voting on this legislation or regulations or whatever.
Yep, I know where you're going.
It still comes down to people educating themselves and using their brains and saying,
and holding people accountable.
Yes, and if we really want to be free, listen. Here I go again talking about the devil's lettuce, but you know how many candidates that I've been talking to that we're pretty much eye to eye on. We see eye to eye on. As soon as I bring up recreational marijuana, it comes to a dead halt, and it's like, okay, we're talking about freedom. You guys talk about freedom, but how much freedom are we talking about?
Their version of
7/8, 80%, or do you want to go all the way and be like really free, or is that too frightening for you? It is
too frightening for them. People think of libertarians as anarchists and everything, and Ron Paul said it best. He's like, if heroin, he's talking to a room full of people. If heroin was legal right now, they just signed it right now, it became legal. How many people in this room would go do heroin? Right? No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't care if it's legal, right? You couldn't talk me into it. Probably couldn't pay me. I mean, the absolute insanity that people have, that if there's just not certain laws that people are just going to go bonkers, is nuts, because nobody wants to go bonkers. What we want to do is we want to raise our progeny in peace. That's what I want. I want to raise my progeny in peace, and I want to be able to earn and work for the things to sustain myself, or the things that bring me pleasure or that I want, right? As long as I'm not hurting someone, as long as I am not stealing from them or stealing their property or damaging their property, I have committed no crime or trespass against them. And therefore, no matter how much they disagree with the fact that I love to mow my lawn in a Mickey Mouse outfit, it doesn't matter how they feel about stuff, right? It doesn't matter how you feel about something. If I'm not hurting you, if I'm not transgressing you, if I'm not damaging your property, if I'm not stealing your property, you have no right over me, right? Where is it that a small group of people get together, write something down on a piece of paper, and hold me accountable? It's not.
It's not.
I'm not beholden to other man's laws if I'm not transgressing against the natural law of in order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It's we've made it, and when I say we, maybe not necessarily you and I have in some points of my life because I was a delusional Democrat for a while. But, luckily for me, I snapped out of that with some help. But we still have a lot of people who loved using government as a tool to subvert the actions of someone else because it makes them uncomfortable. Here's the thing. What's coming up here real soon? July 4th, Independence Day, right? So all these people are going to be out watching fireworks and going, "Oh, America." And then the next day, the Independence Day thoughts are gone. How can I subvert my neighbor? How can I subvert someone else because I don't like what color they painted their house? I don't like the height of their grass. I don't want them doing X, Y, or Z.
I don't care if they get drunk at night, but God darn it, don't smoke no cannabis.
Yeah, and get drunk and beat your wife. That's cool, but don't partake of the devil's lettuce because then you go down a slippery slope and you start doing heroin and then you're ruining your whole family's life. Whatever thoughts go through their head, but it's I would never do it. Of course, I would never say, hey, if I met these people that are saying all this, I would never actually go, hey, you can't celebrate July 4th because you don't know what freedom is. But I'd love to. but you'd love to say it. You'd love to say, "What are you doing here?" Like, what do you mean?
Right.
I'm here to see the fireworks. It's the 4th of July. Like, yeah. You know what else it's called? It's called Independence Day. You're the same guy who wants to tell shop owners they can only operate at 25% because of Rona. You can't be here supporting 4th of July because you don't even know what freedom is, dude. Go back
You're
home.
gonna make them wear masks and make them vax. But you know what? And it's amazing how like COVID goes away and everything goes back to normal. People just put their hands in their pockets, start whistling like nothing happened last year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, did we forgot about that shit? You know what I mean? Like, we've already moved on to the NBA Finals, playing without a mask, packed stadiums, no worries at all. You know what I mean? Like, no, who cares if you're you remember when there used to be a fight on if you were vaxxed or not? Now who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I mean, the other day someone's like, "Oh, I'm sick. I got COVID." I was like, "Well, I hope you get better." You know what I mean? Before it was like nobody was like, "Hey, I got COVID." They wouldn't have talked about it down the street. You know what I mean? They would have been like, you people got to wake up. Like I know, the funny thing is like most of the people that listen to your show already are on page. You know what I mean? On what's really going on. So we need to get out there and just start educating, holding classes, local coffee meets. I was at a parade the other day and I handed out Missouri Constitutions and U.S. Constitutions. You know what I mean? Like, not to, no other candidate did that. Every other candidate is promising you what they're going to give you, and I'm offering you freedom and teaching you where you can find it.
Yeah.
That's what everybody needs to do, not just people running for office, not just people who are leaders. If you're not a radio talk show, you don't have to be a radio talk show. You can tell everybody about personal freedom, and you can tell them where to find, a Missouri Constitution and how to get involved with being active on the local level and solving the problems of your community before Jeff City or DC screws it up.
Yep, and I'm gonna feel real stupid right here. Here's my stupid moment. Okay.
Okay.
I meant to do something at the beginning of the show because last Saturday I went to Casey Pemberton's event, which was the poker it was a poker shoot. I want to make sure I get the name right here because they held it at Mid-Mo Archery and Shooting Supplies in California. I told the guy I'd give him a plug. And and I believe that the owner's name is Mark. That was a blast. We had an absolute blast there. B, if you know, again, look them up. They do have a Facebook page, I know. And they do have a web address, midmogunandbow.com. Again, they're on.
Where are they at?
They're on
city?
64286 Old Highway 50 in California, Missouri.
Okay.
Now, I just, he does concealed carry classes. He does marksmanship training. I believe he also teaches tactical pistol training. Again, my wife, my daughter, and I went, and we were there for about 4 hours. We had an absolute blast. So yeah, just a quick plug for them. This is not a paid advertisement. I said, hey, you did a really nice thing for Casey. Really had a good time. Give me a business card, and I'll plug you on my show. So Mid-Missouri, archery and shooting supplies in California, Missouri. Again, let me get it right again here, midmogunandbow.com. Check them out and show Mark some love. If you need some stuff, and especially if you're around that area, go check out Mark, because I know you're going to find him. He's super knowledgeable on guns and accessories and all this stuff. And you can tell he knows his stuff on tactical and marksmanship. He knows what he's talking about. So please, please, please give those guys a look if you're in the, if you're in the market for rifles, scopes, shooting, it doesn't matter if it's firearm shooting supplies, archery shooting supplies. Give them a look. You will not be disappointed. Okay, you're a libertarian, and this is a mixed. You get mixed answers from the libertarians on this subject.
Okay,
Robert, and I want to ask you, because it's going to come up. It's going to come up because Roe v. Wade.
What is it?
Roe v. Wade got
okay.
Roe v. Wade got overturned today, and there seems to be, in the Libertarian Party, there seems to be a split, just like in general public. Doesn't matter what political party. You can have Democrats that are against abortion. You can have Republicans that are for abortion. So I don't, I'm not trying to put you under the spotlight and then go, now, Robert.
No, dude, put me under any spotlight you want to. I don't give a shit.
I
don't care.
What are your thoughts on abortion? What are your thoughts on abortion? Do you believe that's just a state issue? I mean, just what are your personal feelings on abortion?
Well, to start off, in the Constitution, it says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Missouri Constitution says you have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and enjoyment of the gains of your own industry. So you have the right to life. The Libertarian Party just doesn't trust the government to really do anything right. Because even if the government outlaws abortion, the government's still guilty of killing. The government's still not really a pro-life entity. If you really look at it, it doesn't do anything that's really pro-life, even if it claims to be pro-life. And I can prove that if we had more time. But I'm more than willing to discuss it anytime, because you got to delve into a whole bunch of, human behavior, Austrian economics, which is something I brought up a lot, which is something that, is being proven to be a solid truth. And Austrian economics just involves a lot of natural laws, as in, here's one, we're on a tax holiday for gas, right? Well, here's what we're doing. We're going to lower this gas tax. We're going to take it away for 3 months. But the problem is we're not going to increase supply. So what you're actually going to do is you're actually going to start hurting the free market, because supply is not going to increase with the lowering of price, which is actually going to probably increase more demand or encourage spending, because people will travel just a little bit more since gas is a little bit cheaper, right? That's natural law. That's Austrian economics tied together. So when it comes down to life, I would rather err on the side of caution on the fact that it is important to protect life, that I think it's redundant or repugnant to disregard life and not actually try to protect it, because it actually, even though it may seem so obsolete to us right now, at one point in time, that life could be very important to the survival of mankind. And it's already happened to our species a couple of times. So we can expect that it may happen again. Life is important. Libertarians don't trust the government to get it right because the government can't provide proof that the government knows what it's doing. So a lot of governments aren't really actually pro-abortion. They would just rather the federal government not get involved. And once again, society, the free markets and science will handle issues based off of the demand and the need that we have, which, right now, a couple years ago, there was a lamb that was actually raised in a artificial womb, right? So as science progresses and the government gets out of the way and people start to realize that we don't really want abortions, and people start to realize that through education, compassion, and teaching and being open and not so taboo about things, that we could actually lower unwanted pregnancies, we could actually lower the causation of the need or the want or what I would say the desperation of an abortion. And then we can just rely to the fact that perhaps there's a medical emergency and the mother's in jeopardy because the mother came first. And so therefore her life would have precedence on the natural law of being able to protect yourself. And this political football keeps a lot of people divided, but you will have to ask each individual libertarian how they feel about it. But I believe it's the state's responsibility to try to protect life. On top of saying that, the state should try to protect life by not murdering people, by bombing innocent people overseas without declaring war like a bunch of cowards. I'm not calling the military cowards. I'm calling our congressional members cowards because they have the sole power to declare war, and they passed it off to the president. And the president doesn't have power to declare war, nor does he have the power to defend who he chooses based off of how he's feeling on that particular day or what his intel says. So the congressional members are cowards.
Yeah.
We as a country, if we're going to be pro-life, let's start being pro-life top to bottom and bottom to top, from start to finish and from finish to start. And then I would go even a step further, that we don't have the right to take somebody else's life unless that person is actually trying to physically harm us or perhaps actually in the process of harming others. By nature, I try to practice a non-aggression principle, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to stand up and protect myself or protect others when the time has been called for. And that's my stance on abortion and being pro-life.
Okay.
And a lot of members of the Missouri Libertarian Party are pro-life. So we strongly believe the government is an utter failure. I mean,
well, yeah, that's a sound, that's a sound scientific conclusion there. I mean, the evidence is there to point that government, as my friend Trish says, everything government touches turns to crap. So, yep.
And see, here's another thing I don't want to do. Here's a danger on this whole anti-abortion stuff I want to point out. So, there's some groups out there that are against abortion pills and things that cause abortion, right? And are we really? I fear that some people are just so far right and so crazy that they would actually start trying to investigate and look at every accidental miscarriage or every miscarriage that happened. You know what I mean? And so that's another reason why libertarians don't trust the state, because these overzealots could just come in and be like, we got to protect life. We got to stop every abortion. And there's some things out there in nature that you could take that could cause a natural abortion, right? And so, the state could easily just start protecting and start investigating every miscarriage. And that's not right. It's not right to have the state in your face all the time, investigating you, looking over you, looking at your documents. You know what I mean? Screw them. So that's another danger of getting, the government involved in certain things. If we really cared about life, then we as a community could just really take part in lowering the abortion in your community and then spreading the word on how you did it. And everybody taking part in, if you believe in protecting life, actually protecting life. So,
yeah, I think another thing it would help, because a lot of, it's a valid, some of these people make a valid point. And I know it's valid because I hear people talking about how expensive adoptions are. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
Because of all the
Why?
exactly. Why are we? Because there's a third party called government involved. If you have
Exactly.
two consenting parties, one says, I don't see myself being able to actually take care of my baby properly. So they're allowing their baby to come to full term, deliver the baby alive, and another couple who is unable to create life says, I would like to adopt your child, but these attorneys and government, the judges and paperwork, bureaucracy, red tape, driving up the cost of adoption. So I think, honestly, if pro-lifers, the ones that are, really zealous, want to help with the abortion thing, then maybe we should take a look at why it's so expensive and time-consuming and inefficient for a woman to say, yes, I don't feel as I would make good mother material, or I'm very poor. I'm afraid I can't care for my child. I would like to put my child up for adoption. Why are we making it so expensive and difficult? But on the other hand, again, I don't agree with abortion either. But on the other hand, say you can't have an abortion. But we're also going to make it super expensive if you can't care for your child to give it up. That's the problem with, and here's my thing. I have a lot of people that I really like. When they found out Roe v. Wade was overturned, they were just apoplectic, okay? But here's my thing. Yep. I tell them, when you allowed the feds to make what they call a healthcare decision, which that's a whole nother issue, but they want to declare it a health issue. You allowed the feds to make a decision. Any government big enough to give you what you want can also take it away. Maybe that was your mistake, was begging the feds to get involved. If you would have left it a state issue, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But no, we had to get the feds involved. And now it's done a 180 on them, and they're freaking out. But you know what? A lot of them will not learn their lesson from this. They will be like, next time I'm going to get the feds involved again. Here's the other thing. Somebody made a really good point today. You know what some Democrats are really out there pushing right now? They're like,
to pack the court.
No, not even that. They're saying,
I think that's what the Roe versus Wade thing is going to do. Is it's going to be the excuse to pack the court.
But there's a lot of them that are saying we're going to ignore the Supreme Court. So
nullification?
Yes, we have Democrats practicing nullification. And so if these so-called freedom-loving Republicans or anybody else out there who supports freedom, right now you should take the Democrats, which is hard to do, as an example. They're leading by example. They're talking about nullification, something that we talk about on this show all the time, and a lot of liberty lovers talk about. So if these Republicans love freedom so much and think things should be state rights or whatever, then the Republicans should be urging their supporters to also look at nullification. But you know what? There's too many Republicans and too many Democrats that like big government because it gives them a career in politics and lots of money to make. So they're not going to. But yes, Democrats have been here the last, year or so, like really nullification crazy. And I'm like, I don't think they understand the can of worms that they could open if this was to catch on. And people are like, wait, we can nullify things? And it expands? Wouldn't it be great to take a Democrat tactic, and which is actually based on a good principle, states having the rights to nullify bad federal laws or anything repugnant to the Constitution, taking that and using that against Democrats when they pass these gun laws and all these other things, and like, well, we're going to nullify that, and then watch them lose their minds. And it's like, you taught us this. You're the ones out there saying, screw the, Supreme Court. We're not going to listen to them. You're the ones that taught us how to do that. So thanks, Democrats. I mean, literally, we have to thank them because they're talking about nullification.
I was talking about nullification before they did.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is, if
what are they going to nullify though? Like, you can't. There's no federal law in place. That's what the nullification is all about. Not listening to the federal government. I mean.
Yeah, but you know
Gonna have
what?
to-
They're
What are they gonna?
it's a good educational point for people, because when they say, well, Democrats would never do that, you can play them little audio files and
Yes,
said,
they would.
right here, they said they're going to ignore this. That's nullification. Right now
Yep,
they're
yep.
saying they're going to ignore this. That's nullification.
Man, what if it gets super crazy and then you got like counties just ignoring the state? They're like, nah, not here, partner. I said local and I meant it, damn it.
I mean, so
Well, see, here's the thing. Here's what I want to throw at you. So we start talking about the nullification, and we start talking about like a county ignoring the state or whatever. My favorite. There's a lot of great constitutional amendments, right, on the Bill of Rights. I like to ask a lot of people what's their favorite, and a lot it's like 2A. You might get 10. You might get a couple of ones, but one of my favorites is 9. And 9 is pretty much like, just because it's not listed here doesn't mean it don't exist, right? Just because the natural right is not enumerated in this area doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and it's not meant to disparage it, right? And so the Ninth Amendment opens up a whole can of worms on, well, what is a constitutional right? It's my constitutional right to medicate myself the way I see fit. So perhaps I want to partake in cannabis. I don't need recreational cannabis, and I don't need a doctor to tell me what to do with my body. Most of the time, a doctor will actually steer you wrong. Doctors don't really cure things. They sell prescriptions, and then they sell prescriptions to cure the symptoms that your prescriptions gave you, right?
Right.
Most of our medicine, 80% of our medicine is actually made from petroleum. It's petroleum-based. It's oil-based, right? That's another reason why we don't let go of oil so easy. It's because our medicine is petroleum-based. That's why we actually, that's why you take a pill and your butt bleeds. It's petroleum-based. That's why you take pills and it could give you cancer or heart attacks or mess you up. It's not only the chemical reactions within your body, it's because you're actually consuming a petroleum-based product. Your body has cannabinoids in it, right? It has cannabinoid receptors. If you go by God and creation, your body was created. Your body was designed with these cannabinoid receptors. It wasn't designed with petroleum receptors, right? It wasn't designed with crude oil receptors. It was designed with cannabinoid receptors. Your body is meant to intake cannabinoids at certain times, and certain ones will do certain things, and it was by design. So all these people, back to your point on the candidates who are against it, but yet they'll turn around and be like, I go to church every Sunday. You're not listening to design because it's already within you. You can't deny it, right? So the Ninth Amendment opens it up. I can do whatever I want as long as I'm not harming you or harming others or stealing or damaging property. The right is there just because it's not acknowledged or enumerated in the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment enumerates and acknowledges all of them. And that comes down to my constitutional rights, or my natural rights exist in the fact that I can do whatever I want as long as I'm not harming others, stealing their property, or damaging their property. I can't say that enough. And that's in the Ninth Amendment. That's in the Constitution. And we need to start recognizing that. So if the state passes a bad, unconstitutional law in another county, is like, nah, we don't do that. I perfectly support it, right? Because we should be able to come to peace. If you notice, the government will force you. The government will get violent with you. The government and its agencies will trample you if you resist alone. But when you resist with many, the government has to bow because it is consent. We are consensually governed, right? We are consenting. And if you resist and you're saying this is against my Constitution, we don't need these people writing laws telling us what is right and wrong. We already know what's right and wrong. Back to 3 simple rules. Don't hurt others. Don't steal their stuff or damage their property. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's as simplistic as you can. When Jesus said you could follow all the commandments with 2 things: love God and love your neighbor. And you would follow all the laws, right? We don't need the laws enumerated. We don't need 3,000-page laws. We don't need stacks of laws that are just numerous. That it's so numerous that Harvard Law studies suggest that the average citizen commits 3 felonies a day without knowing it. So that's just go look. It's a Harvard study. You can easily go look it up for anybody listening. And we don't need that. We don't need that. We need to get away from it. Let people live peace I believe as a free society with free markets, with our communities, we all love and want our communities to thrive. I don't be like, Nevada, I hope you burn in hell. You know what I mean? I don't wish harm on Nevada. I don't want it to be trash. I care about it. Most everybody cares about their communities, but people can't care about your community as much as you when they're detached hundreds of miles away, and they never even had to live 6 months in your area. You know what I mean? So we need to get back to the personal freedom, allow people to live their lives. We don't need the government constantly putting the boot and laying down the law and forcing people violently into compliance. If those people aren't hurting other people, if those people aren't stealing people's property, or if those people aren't damaging other people's property, we don't need the government to come in. The government is supposed to secure the rights. The government is supposed to protect the rights. The government is supposed to ensure that there's justice when rights are violated. That's what the government is there for. The government isn't there to say, well, that's wrong, even though these crimes have no victim. The government's not supposed to make money off of us and rip us off through taxes and then spend it overseas for gender studies and leave tanks and fully automatic firearms with 3-round bursts and all kinds of night scopes and optics that I would just dream of. You know what I mean? That's not what the government is for. We needed the government to become very simple, very small, and very limited and out of our lives, and our communities will actually thrive. Because our communities are built off of failure and government programs that didn't work, that was borrowed, which is deficit spending is directly tied into inflation. So everybody who's upset about how prices have soared for the last year and a half, the person that you voted for last election and the people that you voted for that are still there that you might have voted for 20 years ago, the deficit spending is directly tied to the inflation. So we're only hurting ourselves every time we borrow and spend money that's not there to create and do stuff around us. It's all unsustainable, and it's time to get back to Austrian economics and sound money. That's one of the reasons why the COVID hurt us so bad. That's why inflation does hurt, is demand. Demand stayed the same, and then all of a sudden demand increases while they're shutting down and decreasing supply while they're pumping $8 trillion in a 4-year span. It was $7.9 trillion. You know what I mean? That's why we're having the inflation we have. And then they have to manipulate and lie about it, because if we really knew, or if most of us could actually do the math, not to be not to be insulting on that one, we would actually realize that inflation is much, much, much higher than what they're saying. And, therefore, the government is actually now feeding us both data, which they've done numerous times. The government cannot be trusted, and therefore, we should not give it these powers. We should take these powers away, bring them home to our communities, because the government's going to abuse us. It's going to lie to us. It's going to force us, and it's not going to get any better, because you're not going to replace the swamp in 200 years. You got to take the power away from the swamp. And when those creatures don't have power, they will just naturally leave and try to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, we and again, one of the reasons I switched to pretty much focusing on Missouri issues only, because I came to a conclusion that the feds are a lost cause. Now, you got guys like
you helped me realize that too.
Well,
you helped me realize that too.
Guys like Jacob Turner, who are running for U.S. House, and Dustin Hill, who I interviewed last week, also running for U.S. Congress.
Mike Moon.
Yeah.
Mike Moon, a CD7, 100% constitutional candidate. You got Rick Bratton in CD4. He's running for U.S. House. He has an excellent constitutional record. He's actually been able to do some great things actually for the district and my district. So I just wanted to bring those people up because those people need to be named.
Yeah, it's just, I really wish Mike Moon would stick to the state of Missouri. I wish these guys, some of them that I interview, would stick to the state. And I mean, I get it. The Fed, the U.S. Congress is just a stinking pile of sludge, and You want to try to
Yep.
make things better.
And they can. You know what? They can. Don't get discouraged, because here's my argument on the fact that you wish they would stay here. We vetted them, and we can send them to the feds, right? It's better to stop bad legislation than it is to pass any legislation. If we get enough people, we can start hanging shit up. John, I'm so sorry, dude. I swear I love you. We could start stopping bad legislation and hanging it up, right? There won't be any legislation, and that's actually a good thing. So the more that Missouri can actually vet and get voting records and say, hey, when we send you to Washington, D.C., we expect the voting records to match, right? When CD7 sends Mike Moon, that 100% constitutional voting record better match, right? Because we have a comparison now. Same thing with Rick Bratton. And that's one of the reasons why I'm glad that they're running, and I think we should push people who are vetted, because we have a voting record to base them off of. Missouri can accidentally send another rhino to Washington, D.C. Look at this race for the Republicans. It's a right. You got gas tax Schatz. You got Vicky Hartzler, who's voted for red flag laws in HR 4350. There was red flag gun confiscation language in it. She voted for it. You have let's see, who else do you have? You have Mark McCloskey, who has no experience whatsoever other being a lawyer, and the fact that he had a case that he could have fought and won, and even if he lost, he would have had a pardon. He didn't fight, right? Because he didn't want to get uncomfortable. And I love what he says. I've heard him speak at the debates. I honestly, what he says is correct, but I wish he would have fought it, because you ended up getting your law license in trouble anyway. So you should have just fought it and then just been pardoned, and then we'd see you as a fighter. So the Senate, then they allowed some guy who's not even a Republican on the ballot. C.W. Gardner, I think his name is. That dude's not even a Republican. Like, he talks about big government like, it's his mom. And it's scary that they took his money for Senate. What if that dude accidentally wins because it's split between 13 people? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, no protections at all. So when we have, I want Mike Moon to stay in Missouri because he's awesome, but at the same time, let Mike Moon go to Congress because we can expect his voting record. Let Rick Bratton go to Congress because we can expect his voting record. And maybe we can stop hanging legislation up. Because remember, it took 14 Republicans to get legislation going, right? We start hanging people up. We start lowering those numbers. And what was once split, and this is why I was promoting libertarian parties, because in the Senate is easy because you got 100. So if you had 30 Republicans, 30 Democrats, and 20 Libertarians, the chances of something bad passing would be very low. Or you could go 40, 40, and 10. Or excuse me, I did the math wrong. It'd be 40, 40, 20. And you'd be able to hang up legislation because they wouldn't be able to get the right amount of votes to pass it. You would actually have to force Republicans to come out even more and side with the Democrats even harder, instead of just letting 14 of them, 14 Republicans take the bullet, right? Because they let Roy, because he's retiring, so who cares, right? He's leaving. They let. If you look, Republican Party will let these termed out, especially in Missouri. If they're termed out, Republicans will vote heavily big state, more taxes. Patricia Pike did. If you look at the federal side, if somebody's retiring, then they're the designated evil, right? And so it took 14 Republicans. Imagine if those 14 Republicans, imagine if 10 of them were libertarians that went side with it. You hung up bad legislation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
it's a tall order. It's a really tall order. Because again, the voters, apparently a lot of them don't mind being lied to, and won't take the time to do the dang research. That
well,
in essence,
half the research they get false. If you look at it, I mean, nobody knows that Vicky Hartzler. Not too many people know that Vicky Hartzler voted for red flag language. But just a minute ago, a couple days ago, Republicans were just mad at Roy Blunt, right? Just chewing him up. They're still calling to chew him out and call him up and email him and whatnot. And but they're willing to vote for Vicky Hartzler, but she voted for red flag laws. It could be you can look it up. I mean, not you, but anybody listening or anybody in doubt, you can look it up. HR 4350 voted for it. It was in September. I want to say September 21st, 2021, right? Just last year. I mean, that's what she was voting for. Vicky Hartzler's taking taxpayer money, millions of dollars in taxpayer money. She's taking it, but she'll vote no on welfare. She'll vote no on welfare, but she'll take farm subsidies worth millions of dollars. She'll take PPP programs and take money from the taxpayers. But what does she give? She votes yes for bills that she probably hasn't even properly read, and it contains red flag knowledge. And we're going to send her to the Senate. She's not going to be a champion. You know what I mean? Dave Schatz, he's not going to be a champion. We voted no on a gas tax, 3 times?
3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. No means no. They tax raped us. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, no. They just pulled our pants off and raped us anyway, right? And we're going to vote for him. Who's going to vote for that guy?
Yeah, well,
why would we even allow him on the ballot? Why would the Republican Party even take his money? They should have scoffed at him. They should have threw eggs at him. You know what I mean? Like, taking and then here's a funny story. So this is a true story. This is a God honest true story. So I'm involved in my Vernon County politics. I'm like a lone libertarian. I'm like this one guy. Actually, I met another libertarian today. She's like, I didn't know there's another libertarian in this county, and I was like, I almost felt the same way. So I'm involved with my Vernon County politics, and sometimes online I can get a little mouthy and I can say some things that aren't sugar-coated, and it can kind of scathe and upset people. So, I'm talking to the chairwoman of Vernon County Republicans, and I'm like, why do you guys let the Republicans on the ballot for decades, right? Dave Schatz, and I started naming off, people that they would just, if you put the quotes around rhino, people would consider these rhinos. And I start naming them off. I was like, and I start talking about how long they've been in politics. And, she tries to she blows me off. And she's like, well, you got to leave it up to the voters. And I was like, but the Republican Party has the opportunity to vet and stop unconstitutional, big government, more tax representatives. And you guys have the authority to do it. I've seen the Libertarian Party refuse money, right? You don't have to give a reason. You just say no. You don't. You have the right to associate. You also have the right to disassociate. And so I bring it up to her, and she blows it off. Dude, it wasn't like a month and a half later. I'm sitting at the Republican meeting because I wanted to hear a couple of local candidates speak because I have to vote on local stuff. And there's no Democrats running. There's no Libertarians running. So it's just Republicans. So I got to do my research. She was very kind, very warm, and invited me to eat with them and everything. But at the end of the meeting, after everybody spoke, she's talking about how she had a conversation with John Ashcroft and how they're going to start vetting the party more and how they're going to start denying ballot access and they're going to start working to control things more. And she personally talked with John Ashcroft, and they've come to the realization of what I just, was speaking on. It's nuts, right? Because when I went and filed, I too had a conversation with John Ashcroft, and I too brought up the same thing with Mr. Ashcroft when I was filing my paperwork, and I talked to him about it, and I was giving him grief for allowing rhinos on the ballot for 10 years. And that's party over country. That's why our country's in a big mess, is because people will rob, steal, and take your ideas, ignore you if you don't join up with the right club. I shouldn't have to join the Republican Party to partake in my government if I'm equipped enough, knowledgeable enough, and competent enough to go and do it. Because I can ride a bicycle, you know what I mean? And I can shoot well. I can garden. I can raise pigs and cows. You know what I mean? I can do all kinds of stuff. I run a company on 100% organic growth. I don't take grants. I don't take government money, but I'm going to get ignored because I didn't join up. But I'm planting seeds, and I feel good that maybe I got blown off. But what I said, the Republican Party is going to start scrubbing their watch. They're going to start scrubbing their ballot access, and you know what? Mission accomplished, right? So, true story.
Well,
100%.
Here's what I'd like to see personally, and nothing would give me more pleasure than to see. It's not going to happen. Okay, I'll just admit it's not going to happen. I'm just saying, hypothetically, I'd love to see this. I would love to see the Republican Party do what the Mises Caucus did to the National Libertarian Party and sweep out all the left loonies like Sarwark and the like out of there and say, you know what? You had your chance with COVID. You had your chance with a lot of things. You screwed it up. You're in here complaining about bigotry and all these other things that we know isn't really thriving in the Libertarian Party, and they got swept. I'd love to see the same thing in the Republican Party. I'd love to see a caucus of true conservatives, like old school conservatives, get in there and just wipe the floor and get those people knocked out.
I want to see constitutional. Let's use constitutional, because there are no old school conservatives.
But bring that nostalgia back.
I agree with you. I'm not trying to dog. I was just saying, the constitutional and conservative people are like, I'm the most conservative. I'm the most conservative. I'm going to fight for your rights. I'm like, you don't know your rights. You don't know my rights. You don't acknowledge my rights that I acknowledge that you don't acknowledge. And you're up here trying to talk about you're the conservative one. I don't know. You know what I'd like to see the Republicans go back to? I want to see them go back to Calvin Coolidge.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. That type of conservatives getting in there.
Laissez-faire market. Yep.
Because
anti-war.
I can't remember the name of the guy. I interviewed him back in, oh, good Lord, was it I think it was 2020. He was out of Michigan. Super cool guy, big Ron Paul guy. Now, he worked within his state and his district to wipe out what he called the old white guy mentality, the establishments.
Uh-huh.
And he wasn't saying that as a racist, these white people, but he's like the old white men that were just happy to go along, to get along. Now, in his district, he fought super hard and went in there and just wiped the floor with them and booted them out and started something new. Now, he told me I need to get in touch with that guy again at some point, because he told me that if he didn't win, because he had to run against Rashida Tlaib, which I saw.
Where was this again?
This is up in Michigan.
Michigan. Was his name Dustin?
I can't remember. I cannot remember his name to save my life. All I know is I saw the vote, because he told me after the interview, he's like, do I expect to win? No, but he's like, I got a message, and I've got this energy, and if I lose, I'm going to take my campaign funds and I'm going to distribute those into other districts and other states to candidates who are willing to do the same thing I do and revamp a lot of Republican, committees throughout these states. Now, I saw the voting totals between Tlaib and himself, and I was shocked to see he got a lot of votes. Now, he lost, but he got a lot of votes. That the guy just had something about him. He, again, big Ron Paul supporter. I mean, literally worked in his area on campaign committees, all this stuff. But that dude was on fire. And I one of these days I got to get a hold of him again and talk to him to see what he's accomplished, because again, I'm not beholden to any party. I don't go along with any party. I'm a candidate guy, but he would be a good example to bring on to say, hey, if he can do it up around Detroit, Michigan, there's no reason we can't do that here in the state of Missouri. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
people are waking up to the sound of freedom. It's not a lost cause. I'm surprised at how much the freedom movement has actually been growing by leaps and bounds.
COVID did that.
Especially since COVID.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And, to be honest, like, I'm kind of glad COVID happened because it made a lot of people expose their hands and true character. And at the same time, it really brought about a little bit of the jar that you need to just wake up. And I believe more people than not woke up because I know a lot of people who are, I don't know. I know I have a lot of people in my circle that I would consider them Democrats. And I also have a lot of libertarians and Republicans. But the Democrats are starting to realize that the government is not for you, and that the government lies, and the government's been making false promises, and that when the Democrats win, they don't follow through with their promises. And so, you got a lot of people just kind of waking up, and then, a lot of the gun purchases recently, those were Democrats. You know what I mean? Like, I guarantee it. I guarantee nobody with 12 guns went and got another one. Maybe somebody did. I did. But a lot of Democrats are waking up, and they're starting to realize that they're coming about to the fact that the government is bad. I had a friend the other day ask for advice on homeschooling because schools are crap, and I was like, oh, check out this place, and you got to have time to homeschool because we homeschool, and you got to work with it. But I feel like our kids are way more advanced than kids at school. My children know they can identify edible plants. They can identify local plants in Missouri. They can read. They can write. They can do math. They can figure things out that I take that other kids can't figure out because they think on a different level. They don't think on a sit there and be quiet level. We pretty much let our kids learn at their own pace. And I've noticed that the more I back off, the faster they go. And I really feel like that relationship can be transferred over to the constituent government relationship, right? The more the government would back off, the faster we would go, the faster we would advance, the faster that we would learn to get along, the faster that we would make things right in our communities. But the government is interfering and pressing us. Like teen cannabis use was going up, right? But in states that legalized it, even Colorado, which they've had about 10 years now, ever since they legalized it, they've noticed teen smoking going down. You know what I mean? And so partaking in cannabis, teen cannabis use has been going down. It's decreasing. Well, that's because they don't have a parent telling them not to, right? You have a kid, right? You tell your kid not to do something, they do it anyway.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not because they're dumb. It's not because they're dumb. It's not because kids can't listen. They can listen perfectly. My kids can be angels in public, right? And they're heathens when they're around nobody, right? But the thing is that, we have this nature that when somebody says don't, we do it. You know what I mean? You can't go to space, watch me, right? You can't jump that, watch me. You can't go that fast on land, watch me. You know what I mean? That's our mentality. You tell us we can't, and we go and we do it. The more you have the government telling you can't, the more you have the government regulating and stifling and holding us back, the slower we are to progress. If you look at human nature, the government is actually probably responsible of like at least the world's government for the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. I would say the last 2,000 years has probably held us back by another 6,000. You know what I mean? When you had religion, stifling anything that, questioned the world being flat or flying through space or, you know what I mean? Like the government and the religions would just stymie and stifle and smother out.
Science, basically science.
Yeah. So, and we need the government to just back up because the government has alternative motives. The government, let's just say Russia right now launched 100 nuclear weapons and they're coming right at us, and the United States lets us know, hey guys, sorry, right? The military has bunkers. Government officials have bunkers. They can live in mountains for years, right? Where do you go? Where do you and I go, right? The government didn't build us bunkers, right? The government didn't build us shelters. The government didn't build us contingency plans, right? So therefore, the government's contingency plans and the government's actions, we're not even in their calculations, right? Their calculations are, well, if this happens, we're going to go in and it's important that the government survives, right? But the normal people, what? They're not even calculating us in it. They're not even thinking about us. They don't think about us on anything. They claim they do, but they're ignorant in their actions. Everything they do has an adverse reaction and actually hurts us more. They got into they got into insurance, right? Republicans said they're going to drop the price. They fiddle with it. What happens? It goes up. Obama comes around. What? Let's see. Nixon. What? How many years is Obama later? Whatever. Was it 24, 26? What does Obama do? He meddles with it. I'm gonna make it better, right? I'm gonna make everybody get it. It's gonna keep your medical provider. It's gonna be cheaper. The world's great. What did it do? Premium skyrocket again, right? So you have two instances where a Republican and a Democrat both get involved in insurance and the prices go up. Prices go up every time the government gets involved in something. Every time. The government does more damage than it does good. It'll lie about all the damage it does. It'll hide it. It'll cover it up. It'll black it out and shred it and catch it on fire. And then the little 1/8 of a good thing that they got, they'll blast it like it's just some trumpet. And people need to wake up that you're just being fooled. You're being robbed. Your government's robbing you. Your government is stealing from you, and your government is not including you in its plans. And your government is definitely not including you in the contingency plan of if your government screws up royally and causes a nuclear fallout, right? So it's time to get the word out. And I think we're there. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that we've been bamboozled.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Robert, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go? Unfortunately, I have to close my door. I have no I have no register in my room. There's an AC unit that sits in a window, but I have to close my office door so I don't get a bunch of background noise. And this room is like an oven.
You're baking.
And I'm so, yeah, I am baking. And it's like after so long, I'm like, I get so uncomfortable. I'm like, I got to stop. This. So actually, first of all, where can people find you at? Do you have a website or?
Yes, sir. You can go to showmesmith.com, and that's showmesmith.com. And then I have email address. You can reach me at smithlovesmissouri@outlook.com. And I also have a Facebook, Robert E. Smith Fights for Liberty. And you can reach out if you want to donate to the campaign. I don't pay for like a credit card service or anything like that. So what I've been doing is we have some self-addressed envelopes that if people reach out, I can send them one, and then they can send whatever they want back to me, and then I record it in my campaign.
Awesome. Well, sir, it was good talking to you again. Well, before we go, how is the campaign going?
Man, it's it's doing great, actually. So I can't say some things until after the primaries because I'm letting the primaries roll out. The Republicans can hash it out in my area. And then once the primaries are over, we are locked, loaded, and ready to hit the ground running. I have been doing some speaking engagements. I have been getting out into the public. We were in the parade. I've been going to some meetings and getting the word out there. August 6th, we're going to have a political party. And I've invited some speakers to come and give a few bars on a little bit of education for the public. So there's going to be constitutional topics. There's going to be on the U.S. There'll be a couple of Missouri constitutional topics. And what I want people to come out, get an education, and get a free meal. I'm going to serve burgers and most likely going to have a couple of beers for anybody of drinking age to show up. Get a little bit of knowledge. We're going to try to have the Missouri constitutions out and the U.S. constitutions out for people to take home and try to spread the knowledge of freedom and personal liberty and what we can do to better our communities before the state decides to intervene and mess it up. But the campaign, I'm excited to have our events. We got some pig roasts planned. We got a few. We're gonna have Wagyu steaks and Wagyu burgers a couple of times, and hopefully during these events, win or lose, I plant seeds and I educate people on personal liberty, and I look forward to it. So I am the candidate to vote for in District 125. I've been doing a lot of opposition research, and the other candidates just don't stack up. So look forward to getting that message out as soon as I know which one that I'm going to be going against. So.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this, Robert.
Oh, and no third party. There's no Democrat. So there will not be any vote split.
Oh.
It's a two-way race. It is me, the Constitution, versus the other guy. Most likely, based off of everything they say, it's going to be somebody who promotes taxes, promotes big government, promotes the government to enforce their views type of guy. And we just don't need that in Jeff City. Not only that, they have no I'm not saying that I've been in Jeff City for 10 years and I know everything there is, right? But these guys haven't been to Jeff City, right? I really don't feel like they have any knowledge of what's going on or what's been there. They don't have any knowledge of who to avoid and the snares and the traps, and they don't understand the proceedings and how things work. And, you know, the only time they picked up the Missouri Constitution is probably because they heard me talk about it, and they, you know what I mean. So we're gonna just go out there and preach freedom and let people know that it's a two-way race. You can vote for me if you're a Democrat. You can still vote for me because you'll be able to get the freedom and liberty that you want to be who you are without the government booting you. And the same thing with the Republicans. They'll get to. And the independents will get to vote for somebody who will allow them to operate in an Austrian economic free market with personal liberty and personal responsibility in the community. So it's something to get behind and do.
All right. Well, I'll let you know, Robert, that I don't foresee myself being on the weekend shift by August 6th because I still have to train my replacement and then get moved to the new department and train for so long before they throw me on the weekend shift. So tentatively, I will say that I will be there to speak, and that is going. You may regret that, but I will be there to speak because I'm not a public speaker. But that's a hurdle I have to get past. That's something I have to work on for myself.
Not a problem.
You're going to allow me to do it, and hopefully I don't embarrass you or myself. But yeah, tentatively I should be able to make it there again because if my trainee comes back from medical leave Monday, I've got 2 to 3 weeks to spend with him to get him right before I move. And then it could be a couple months before they say, all right, you're ready to move to weekends. So,
right.
Also, just to put it in everybody's head, this is also tentative. This is something tentative. I spoke to Patrick from the Missouri Freedom Initiative the other evening and talked to Sam from Missouri Liberty Radio. And we are going to be discussing bringing Patrick up to Owensville here. If we can find a good spot, which we're probably going to end up being the VFW Hall. Patrick's talking about inviting some people from all over to come, maybe speak, because I want the local listeners here to meet Patrick and some of the other people from the Missouri Freedom Initiative and talk about some of the things they've done, some of the things they want to work on, and just have a get together. So, if I'm sure if Patrick advertises, he can bring people in from all over, but that is a tentative plan. I talked to Patrick about it. He said he was cool with that. I talked to Sam. He said he was down with that.
Nice.
Now I just got to find a place. I'm going to try to make it in September at some point, and we'll find a venue. And then once I have a date that I know we can do it, and it's good for Patrick, then I will start advertising. Sam will start advertising, and Patrick will start talking about it. And we'll get that all worked out and maybe have a big shindig for Missouri Freedom here in Owensville. What with that will do it for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Thanks so much, Robert, for coming on with me. Everyone in the live stream who joined in tonight, to comment and listen in. Appreciate you all. And to all of those who download this podcast, wherever you get it, make sure you hit that follow button. Make sure you hit that like button for me, because the more of you that do that, the more people will have the opportunity to find this in a search engine, and we can continue spreading the message of freedom and liberty here in the state of Missouri. So again, I bid you all adieu. And also, don't forget to check out MOLibertyRadio.us, especially, well, randomly on Sunday nights. It used to be consistent. But on Sunday evenings, sometimes Sam does off-the-cuff radio. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out Key Radio, keyradio.live or keygatheringplace.com, KEYK. Side note, on July 11th at 8:10 in the morning, I will be on the morning show with Ken Burns to talk about my show and happenings here in Missouri. So if you're all are able to listen that morning, July 11th at 8:10 a.m. with Ken Burns, I will be on to discuss the Missouri Liberty Report podcast and all things Missouri. And then also don't forget to check out, look up the Missouri Freedom Initiative. Check out their website. You can also find them on Twitter and Facebook. And check out Govern America, Darren Weeks Network out of Michigan. But anyway, now that I got all that spit out, again, everybody have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week here on the Missouri Liberty Report.
Heck yeah. Let freedom ring.
Oh, man. Okay, so that'll do it. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, folks. To all of you that joined in and commented and stayed through the whole stream, appreciate all of you. Make sure you guys, you all that watch this stream, share it with your friend, a family, a foe, whatever, the babies, all those people. Get them watching the YouTube stream as well, doing that for me. But thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you all next Friday. Oh, by the way, everybody in the live stream, next Friday, I will be talking to Susie Pollock. Susie Pollock will be on with me next week. I've got one other gal by the name of Sherry Tolson. Going to try to have her on. And then there's one other dude. I forgot his name. Now, he's running for Congress. I've got to do a little more research on him. But he actually sent a thing to me today while I was at work and asked if he would love to come on. Brandon Wilkinson. So he will be on July the 8th. So the next 2 weeks, I've got more interviews set up. Susie is going to be a great friend to freedom. We already know what happened to her the last legislative session, but I wanted to give her the chance to come on talking about her Senate run and her, we are going to bring up the vaccine freedom bill that she had proposed and if she's willing to talk about kind of what happened so everybody gets a sense of seeing what Plocker the Blocker does. And then, then next week, Wilkinson will be on with me, and we'll talk about his run for U.S. Congress. And with Wilkinson, I don't know about a lot. I know he's a truck driver. I don't know if he's over the road or if he's more of a local, but he drives a truck. And apparently he's one of the more popular candidates in the state of Missouri. And with him, I'm going to do like I did with, what the heck was his name? Scott Rydell. And the other gal that I can't remember her name now, I'm going to bring him on. I'm going to ask him about topics, about things that we fought for here in Missouri, let them answer. And then, of course, Wilkinson, he's going to want to discuss some federal issues. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'm just going to tell you, or I'm going to leave it to you to decide. And that's how I don't want to be a political organization because that gets into another whole mess. So anyway, that's what we got coming up the next 2 weeks. I'm also going to try to get Sherry Tolson on with me at some point. I did send her a lengthy text message this morning, and I'm hoping she will respond soon enough. But that's coming up the next 2 weeks. Lots of good interviews and information to be had. So peace out, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.